Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring something that, might make you look at your houseplants a little differently.
Oh,
The secret social lives of plants.
interesting.
You sent us the stack of research articles and book excerpts that seem to show how plants are constantly interacting,
Right.
communicating, and making choices
Yeah.
based on their social scene.
Yeah.
Honestly, I had no idea.
Hmm.
I always thought of plants as pretty passive.
Yeah, it's easy to assume that, right? They just kind of sit there and soak up the sun.
Yeah.
But the more we study plants,
Right.
the more we're realizing they're anything but passive.
Okay.
They're actually engaging in complex social behaviors, some of which were once thought to be exclusive to the animal kingdom.
Like what?
Well,
Give me an example.
take eusociality.
Eusociality.
It's a complex social structure where individuals sacrifice their own reproduction for the benefit of the group.
Okay.
And it's found in species like bees, ants, and even certain mole rats.
Right.
What's fascinating is that we're starting to see evidence of this type of social behavior in plants as well.
Eusociality in plants.
Yeah.
Okay, now you have my attention.
Okay.
What kind of plant would do that?
One example is the staghorn fern.
Staghorn ferns.
Some of their fronds act like worker bees,
Really?
gathering water and nutrients for the whole colony,
What?
while others are responsible for reproduction.
Okay.
It's a division of labor that benefits the entire fern community.
So not all fronds are created equal.
Right.
Some are all about supporting the group,
Yeah.
even if it means they don't get to reproduce themselves.
Yeah.
That challenges my whole perception of plants.
It's a real game changer.
Yeah.
And this leads to a bigger question.
Okay.
If plants are capable of this level of social organization, what else are they capable of?
I'm ready to dive deeper.
Okay.
What else have researchers discovered about plant social behavior?
One of the most intriguing areas of research is kin recognition.
Kin recognition.
Yeah.
I can barely recognize my own cousins at a family reunion.
Hmm.
How can a plant tell who's related to them?
That's what makes this research so fascinating.
Yep.
A researcher named Susan Dudley did some groundbreaking work on this.
Wow.
She was studying the American sea rocket.
Okay, I know sea rockets.
Yeah.
They're pretty tough plants, right?
Exactly.
They have to survive in harsh conditions.
Yeah.
With salty winds and sandy soil.
Exactly.
Oh.
And Dudley discovered that sea rockets actually grow differently depending on who their neighbors are.
Interesting.
If they're surrounded by strangers,
Okay.
they grow more aggressively,
Oh.
putting all their energy into expanding their root systems to outcompete their neighbors for resources.
Right.
But if they're growing next to their siblings,
Yeah.
they're much more restrained.
Really?
They share resources and avoid crowding each other's roots.
So it's like they're playing nice with their family,
Yeah.
but they're not afraid to throw down with strangers.
Right?
How can they even tell the difference?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Dudley's research suggests that they're able to detect chemical signals released by the roots of other plants.
Interesting.
These signals are like a plant's ID card,
Okay.
allowing them to distinguish kin from non-kin.
So the key takeaway here
Yeah.
is that plants like the sea rocket can actually recognize their relatives and adjust their behavior accordingly,
Right.
which gives them an evolutionary advantage.
Right.
That's like a built-in family support system.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this kin recognition isn't limited to sea rockets.
Oh.
Researchers have found similar behavior in other plant species as well.
Okay.
For example, sunflowers produce more oil when they're planted with their siblings,
Really?
maximizing their collective output.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
They're literally helping each other out,
Right.
even though they don't have brains or nervous systems like we do.
Right.
That's wild.
And this brings us to another mind-blowing concept,
Okay.
the rhizosphere.
The rhizosphere. That sounds a bit like a science fiction term.
It might sound futuristic, but it's happening right under our feet. The rhizosphere is the area around a plant's roots,
Okay.
where a complex web of interactions takes place between the plant,
Right.
fungi, and microbes.
Interesting.
It's like a bustling underground city
Wow.
where everyone is connected and constantly exchanging information.
Okay, paint me a picture.
Okay.
What's going on down there in this rhizosphere?
Imagine this. A single rye plant.
Okay.
Its roots spreading out like an intricate network, encountering a mind-boggling number of other roots.
Okay.
Fungal threads, bacteria,
Right.
all vying for resources, exchanging signals, and forming relationships.
Wow.
It's a constantly evolving ecosystem driven by cooperation, competition, and a whole lot of communication.
So it's not just a free-for-all down there.
Right.
There's actually some organization and communication happening.
Absolutely. And one of the most intriguing aspects of this underground network is the concept of swarm intelligence.
Swarm intelligence.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right. You see, swarm intelligence is the idea that a group of individuals, each with limited knowledge and abilities, can work together to achieve a common goal, exhibiting a kind of collective intelligence that's greater than the sum of its parts.
mm.
We see this in ant colonies, beehives, flocks of birds, and there's growing evidence that plant roots may exhibit a similar type of intelligence.
That's a wild concept. So
Uh-huh.
you're saying that a bunch of roots without any central brain or leader can actually coordinate their actions and make decisions together. How does that even work?
Well, think of each root tip as a sensor gathering information about the surrounding environment,
Okay.
the availability of water and nutrients,
Right.
the presence of other roots, even the composition of the soil.
Okay.
This information is then communicated throughout the root system, allowing the plant to adjust its growth and behavior accordingly.
So it's like each root is contributing a tiny bit of information, and the plant as a whole is able to process all of that data and make smart decisions about where to grow, when to compete, when to cooperate, and how to best utilize the available resources. Fascinating.
Exactly. And this brings us to the work of J.C. Cahill,
Oh, yeah.
a researcher who's been challenging the traditional view of plants as solely competitive beings.
I remember reading about his work. Didn't he do some long-term experiments in grasslands?
Yeah.
Where he was manipulating different factors like shade and nutrients to see how plant communities would respond?
That's the one.
Yeah.
And his findings were pretty surprising.
Really?
You'd expect that if you remove a plant species from a community, the remaining plants would just take over and dominate the space, right? But that's not always what happened.
Interesting.
Instead, Cahill found that the whole plant community would shift and reorganize itself in response to the change. Sometimes a completely different species would become dominant. Other times, the community would become more diverse. And in some cases, the removal of one species didn't lead to any significant changes at all.
So it all depended on.
It all depended on the specific relationships and interactions within the plant community.
So it's not just about survival of the fittest. There's more to the story than just who can grab the most resources and outcompete their neighbors.
Exactly. Cahill's work suggests that competition is only one piece of the puzzle. There are countless other factors at play.
Like what?
Symbiotic relationships, resource sharing, even random events that can shape the dynamics of a plant community. It's a complex web of interactions that's constantly evolving and adapting.
So instead of thinking of plant communities as battlefields where it's every plant for themselves, we should be thinking of them more like, I don't know, a bustling city where different species are constantly interacting, negotiating, cooperating, and finding ways to coexist.
It's a great analogy, and one of the things Cahill discovered is that some plant species actually prefer to grow together, forming these multi-species neighborhoods where they thrive in each other's company. They've figured out that cooperation, or at least a kind of peaceful coexistence, can be just as beneficial as cutthroat competition.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me. If plants aren't always duking it out for survival, what's driving these patterns of coexistence? Is it some kind of botanical altruism?
It's unlikely that plants are consciously acting out of altruism, but their behaviors can certainly have the effect of benefiting the entire community.
Okay.
Remember the sunflower example we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
They produce more oil when they're surrounded by their siblings. Well, Cahill's research also showed that sunflowers will actually avoid competing with each other for resources when they have enough space.
Really?
They'll position their roots strategically, even leaving patches of nutrients untouched so that their neighbors have enough to thrive.
So they're not just sharing resources. They're actively avoiding taking more than their fair share. It's like they've evolved to understand that cooperation can lead to greater overall success for the whole community.
It's a fascinating example of how individual plant behavior can have ripple effects throughout the entire ecosystem. And this brings us to another important point. Plants aren't just responding to their environment, they're actually shaping it.
Okay.
Their interactions with each other, with fungi, with microbes, with the soil itself, all contribute to creating the conditions that support life.
Wow. So we've gone from thinking of plants as passive organisms to recognizing them as active architects of their own ecosystems.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the more we learn about the complexity and interconnectedness of the plant world, the more we realize how much we still don't know.
It's amazing to think about all this activity happening below ground,
Mm.
right? And how little we're aware of it as we walk around.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what else we're missing.
That's what keeps me so fascinated by plant research. There's always something new to discover. Some hidden connection that challenges our assumptions. For example,
Right.
there's research showing that even plant seeds aren't just passively waiting to sprout.
Real.
They're actually eavesdropping on their surroundings and using that information to make decisions.
Wait, seeds have a social life too. How is that even possible?
A researcher in Japan, Akira Yamawo, was studying this with Asiatic plantains.
Okay.
Those little weeds with the ear-shaped leaves you see everywhere.
Well, I know those.
He found that the timing of when a seed decides to germinate can be influenced by who else is around.
So they're not just responding to things like temperature and moisture.
Right.
They're actually taking cues from other plants.
Exactly. Yamamoto discovered that when plantain seeds were planted with their siblings and a completely unrelated species, white clover, they sped up their germination process and synchronized their sprouting.
Wow.
It's almost like they were saying, hey, family, let's team up and get a head start before those clover guys take over.
That's incredible. So even before they've even sprouted roots, they're already engaging in strategic behavior. It's like they have some kind of built-in sense of community.
And that brings us back to the rhizosphere, that underground social hub where roots, fungi, and microbes are constantly interacting. We've talked about plants communicating and cooperating, but we can't forget about the crucial role that fungi play in all of this.
Right. We haven't really talked about fungi much. I know they're important for decomposition and stuff.
Yeah.
But how do they fit into this whole social network?
Fungi are the master connectors of the plant world. They form these vast, intricate networks of mycelia, which are basically the fungal equivalent of roots spreading through the soil and linking plants together.
Okay, I've heard about mycelia, but what exactly do they do?
Think of mycelia as the internet of the soil.
Wow, okay.
They connect plants, transfer nutrients, even facilitate communication between different species.
Right.
They form these amazing symbiotic relationships with plant roots, exchanging sugars from the plant for essential minerals that the fungi are able to extract from the soil. It's a win-win situation for both partners.
So it's like a mutually beneficial trading system. The plants provide the food and the fungi provide the minerals.
Exactly. And this partnership has been shaping the evolution of both plants and fungi for millions of years.
Wow.
Some scientists even believe that plants developed their complex root systems specifically to accommodate these beneficial fungi. It's a remarkable example of coevolution where two seemingly different organisms have become deeply interconnected over time.
It's really changing the way I think about the soil. It's not just dirt. It's this incredibly complex and dynamic ecosystem with all these intricate relationships happening beneath the surface.
And it highlights the importance of looking beyond the individual organism and recognizing the interconnectedness of all life. The more we understand these intricate relationships, the more we appreciate the incredible complexity and intelligence of the natural world.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me. I've always enjoyed being out in nature.
Yeah.
But I never realized how much was going on beneath my feet. From eusocial ferns to eavesdropping seeds, from swarm intelligence to fungal trading networks, it's clear that the plant world is far more dynamic and interconnected than I ever imagined.
I'm glad you enjoyed the journey. And remember, this is just a glimpse into the fascinating world of plant social behavior. There's so much more we're learning every day, and who knows what amazing discoveries await us in the future. I encourage everyone to approach the natural world with a sense of curiosity and wonder. There's always something new to discover, some hidden connection that challenges our assumptions and expands our understanding of life.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the mysteries of the plant world. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning,